All right, so welcome everybody who's on YouTube, and we're going to let everyone in. Welcome to Purim 2021! So great to see everyone. Welcome. It's so wonderful to have you here.
Chag
We had a
Sameach,
great-
everyone.
Yeah.
Ooh, hello. My dogs are saying hello, and my family. We're gonna have some good dog barking going on for a couple of minutes, probably. But we can sing it out, right? Rabbi, should we get going? What do we think?
Sure.
Here we go. Chag Purim, Chag Gadol HaLaYehudim, Masechot Rashanim, Zmirot Rikudim, Havana Risha Rash Rash Rash, Havana Risha Rash Rash Rash, Havana Risha Rash Rash Rash, Barashanim. All right. About an hour or so ago, Monkey Rabbi and I rocked it out with a bunch of preschoolers who really know how to take it to a whole new level for Purim. So I want to see some moving around, some dancing. I'm looking at you, Bob Rich. I expect to see a little shoulder going. Chag Purim, Chag Purim, Chag Gadol HaLaYehudim, Masechot Rashanim, Zmirot Rikudim, Havana Risha Rash Rash Rash, Havana Risha Rash Rash Rash, Havana Risha Rash Rash Rash, Barashanim.
All
Chag
right.
Sameach.
Chag Sameach. So welcome everybody. It is so good to see you. Whew. One of the great things about our community is we get to do lots of different kinds of things on different levels. So at 5:30, as nope, Kenny, not a dog. I know, a little hard to tell, but my whole family are the monkeys jumping on the bed. That is our theme. And we were all together at 5:30 at our tot reading doing that, but I've got kids sleeping now. But here's the thing. We had our tot reading at 5:30. This is our kind of community/adult reading. Though, of course, I see some kids here. It's so good to see you. Don't worry. What we're going to do is age appropriate. And on Sunday, we've got a special religious school reading aimed specifically toward that age group of kids. Tonight, though, I want you to pay special attention because as I'm telling the story, I realized earlier today that I made one of the hardest trivias that I've ever made. I cannot wait for you guys to do it. So your collective energies, you're going to be able to do it. It is not, I promise you, the hard stuff is not the Jewish stuff. The Jewish stuff are the easy giveaway questions. The hard stuff is like all the pop culture, all that kind of stuff. So I will, from time to time, just be throwing in the answers to clues. You won't know that they're answers to clues, but just listen up closely and you'll find out what you need to do. So everybody's got their drink, right? Whether it be tequila or whiskey or something like that, you got that, right? So if you want, make sure, enjoy yourself tonight. And you know what? If you got a seltzer, if you got a chocolate milk, whatever you have is perfect.
Hard kombucha.
Ooh, is that a thing?
It's a thing, and it's a thing that I rather enjoy.
Very cool.
L'chaim.
Very cool. So here is what I want to do. We are going to, over the course of tonight, read a little bit of the Megillah before we move into that kind of trivia portion of the night to help us tell the story. And we're going to see each of the 10 different chapters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call on each reader. After that opening bracha, I'll tell a little bit of that chapter's story, and then I'll throw it to the reader, and the reader will get a chance to read. Then we'll keep moving. We'll have a closing song, and then we'll get on to the trivia. So if you want to, I'm going to put into the chat for everybody a link to the book of Esther. We're actually not going to put it up as a slide or anything like that because we actually want you to see the readers. And so we're privileging you seeing the readers over following along on the chart, on the page. So if you want, click here at each of the different chapters. I'll put the next one in for Esther chapter 2, 3, 4, and all of that. But for now, we're going to get started. So Cantor, I'll invite you to open with the bracha, and then I'm going to tell you what happens in chapter 1. You are on mute though, Cantor.
That's my favorite thing to do, even not on Purim. Baruch atah Adonai. What's going on? What happened to my bracha? This is Ronnie's Purim joke. Nope.
All right. Oops. Here, Ronnie, let's make the cantor a co-host. That way you don't have to worry about that.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al mikra Megillah. Can I see an amen?
Amen.
Thank you. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa nisim lavotenu bayamim hahem b'zman hazeh. Another amen.
Amen.
And finally, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kiyemanu mehigianu lazman hazeh. Can I just jump in?
I was going to tell the story, but jump in.
Yeah, go. Go.
All right. So a long time ago in Shushan, and by the way, you're going to hear, when you hear the Megillah, it's supposed to sound like one of the jesters is rushing in with a letter to read. So I'm going to tell it really quick when I tell it. A long time ago in a land named Shushan, which is in the land of Persia, there was a king, and his name is Achashverosh. And Achashverosh had a giant party. And at that party, he invited all of the outskirts cities to come and to enjoy himself. And now, because he was a man with a big ego, he made sure that he had the drink flowing and the wine flowing and that there were people there. But he wanted to provide some entertainment. So he turned to his people and he said, I know a way that you can be entertained. I've got a beautiful wife and her name is Vashti. And I'm going to ask Vashti to show up and dance for you all. So he sends one of his eunuchs, one of his courtesans over to go find Vashti. And Vashti hears that the king wants her to come. And Vashti refuses. You see, Vashti is a proto-feminist, and Vashti stands up and says, how dare the king ask me to dance in front of his friends? I refuse. Word gets back to the king, and the king is irate. And he says to Vashti, if you don't come, you can no longer be the queen anymore. In fact, I'm going to exile you from this land. And Vashti demands her independence. And Vashti, the hidden hero of the story, we always talk about Esther. Vashti is somebody I really admire. Leaves the kingdom. And the king is left bereft, needing to find a queen. And so we move into chapter 1.
בימי אחשוורוש, הוא אחשוורוש, המולך מהודו ועד כוש 27 מדינה. בימים ההם כשבט המלך אחשוורוש על כיסא מלכותו אשר בשושן הבירה. בשנת 3 למלכו עשה משתה לכל שריו ועבדיו חיל פרס ומדי הפרטמים ושרי המדינות לפניו.
And so the story continues. And the king needs to prepare for what this means to be able to find a wife. So he ends up gathering all the maidens of the land together. And now remember, this is an old story. He really should be looking for intelligence. He should be looking for thoughtfulness. He should be looking for somebody who has a nice work-life balance. He should be looking for somebody who can win in trivia. But he doesn't. Instead, what does he find? He looks for the woman who is the most beautiful. And in fact, these women spent a lot of time trying to get beautiful. They had 6 months of perfuming and 6 months of makeup put on them. A full year of preparation to make sure that when they got to go out to dinner with the king that one night, that king would be so impressed with them that that king had to have them as his wife. Now, there was this one maiden, and her name was Esther. And by the way, Esther had an uncle named Mordechai, but she had a secret. You see, Esther was Jewish, and the king didn't know that. But yet when the king met Esther, he fell head over heels in love with her. She was a movie star like so many of the people that we admire, like Esther Williams from old all the way up until Catherine Zeta-Jones in The Legend of Zorro. And the truth is, because of that, he so loved her that he picked her as his wife. Now, Mordecai, because he was related to her, got a chance to hang around the castle a good amount. And as he was there, he heard that there were two people scheming to hurt the king. And he found this out, and he went and he told someone, because students who are here, if you see something, say something. And so he saved the king's life, and thus ends chapter 2, as we call to the screen Ken Cohen.
Achar hadvarim ha'ele kisot Hamat hamelech Achashverosh Zachar v'et Vashti v'et asher asata v'et asher nigzar aleha Vayomru na'arei hamelech mishortav Yivakshu lamelech na'arot betulot tovot mareh Vayafked hamelech pikidim b'chol medinot malchuto vayikbetzu et kol na'ara betula tovat mareh el shushan habira el beit hanashim al yad hege seris hamelech shomer hanashim venaton tamru kehen b'hana'ara Asher titav b'nei hamelech timlo tachat Vashti vayitav hadavar b'nei hamelech vayaskein.
All right. Thank you, Ken. And so we then continue on. We're Esther chapter 3 in a second, so I'm going to paste that into the chat for everybody who wants to follow along with our next chapter. And so afterwards, Achashverosh promotes, and we're going to invite you actually to take yourself off mute so that you can do this, especially during this chapter. So hop off mute. He promotes a man named Haman to be one of his chieftains. Now, he used to walk around, this mean old guy with the triangle hat, used to walk around forcing people to bow down to him. And when he would, he finally found that in one circumstance, he walked up to the wrong guy. He walked up to Mordecai and he said to Mordecai, bow down to me. And Mordecai refused. You see, Mordecai was Jewish and Mordecai would only bow down to his God at select times, like, I don't know, when you prostrate on Rosh Hashanah or something like that, if you've ever seen the Cantor and I go fully down during the Aleinu. And so Haman was filled with rage and he wanted to hurt Mordecai, but he decided, you know what? He's going to do one better. And he cast lots, which means he pulled out almost like a lottery, the decision that on the 14th day of the month of Adar, he was going to banish the Jewish people. In fact, Haman went to the king and he said, look, there's a certain people who scattered and dispersed among the other peoples, and I want the king to get rid of them. And by the way, because Haman, though he was evil, was serving an opportunist like the king who just wanted to stay in power and didn't want to create any problems, said, you know what, Haman, whatever you want, you can do. And in that moment, Haman knew that he was ready to destroy the Jewish people. So, Ken Cohen?
I'm up again? All right. Achar hadvarim ha'ele gidal ha'melech Achashverosh et Haman ben Hamdata ha'agani v'nasehu v'yasem et kiso me'al kol hasarim asher ito v'chol avdei ha'melech asher b'shar ha'melech karun mushtachavim lehaman hichein v'lo ha'melech u'mordechai lo yichra v'lo yishtachaveh.
All right. So now we're on to chapter 4. And Mordecai catches wind of Haman's plan. Whoa! And he realizes that he needs to do something. So he puts on sackcloth and ashes and he mourns and he goes and he finds Esther. And he says to Esther, Esther, you gotta do something. You see, if you don't stand up for us, if you don't tell the king what's going on, if you don't save your people, no one will. Perhaps you were put on this earth for this very moment. And Esther is scared. Like all people who have to do big things, she was worried. But she knew that she couldn't do it. And so she went to go find the king. Now, Esther was ready, as she found the king, to ask him to help. But she knew that no one goes there. And so Esther went and she fasted as she prepared for the big day when she was going to be brave enough to approach a king that no one ever approached. And we're going to call Morty to the screen as he chants this chapter.
ומרדכי ידע את כל אשר נעשה, ויקרע מרדכי את בגדיו, וילבש שק ואפר, ויצא בתוך העיר, ויזעק זעקה גדולה ומרה, ויבוא עד לפני שער המלך, כי אין לבוא אל שער המלך בלבוש שק, ובכל מדינה ומדינה מקום אשר דבר המלך ודתו מגיע, אבל גדול ליהודים, בצום ובכי ומספד, שק ואפר יוצא Larabim.
All right. Thank you, Morty. And so we're going to move on to chapter 5 now, because Esther is going to do that brave thing. She's going to put on her queenly garments and she's going to go and she's going to reach the king finally. And she's going to say to the king, King, please, I have a request. And the king's going to say, come close, my dear, whatever you want, I love you. You can have half the kingdom if you want it. Funny enough, if she was getting divorced in modern age, she would clearly have half the kingdom if she didn't have a prenup, right? But the king said, come. And so she did. And she said, King, I've got a request. And the king says, whatever you want. I told you, half the kingdom you can have. And so she says, can you have a party? And can you invite me? Get off mute. Can you invite yourself? And can you invite Haman? All right. And the king was like, yeah, of course. So later, that H-man catches wind.
You have the red nose?
And what he does is he decides that he is going to go and tell his wife about the joy of being invited to this great party with the queen and with the king. But on his walk, he sees his arch nemesis, that guy named Mordecai, that guy who refused to bow down to him. And in his anger, he hates him with a hatred that was hotter, perhaps, than the hatred of all the nations that hated one another. Whether we're talking about Stalin or Hitler, he hated so much. And so he decided to talk to his wife, who told him, you got to double down on this plan. You got to start right now destroying the Jews. Because if a guy like Mordecai sets you off that much, he shouldn't be around anymore. And so with that, we're going to invite to read chapter 5, Lisa Westreich.
Vayehi bayom hashlishi vatilbash Esther malchut v'tamod bechatzar beit hamelech hapnimid Noach beit hamelech v'hamelech yoshev al kisei malchuto beveit hamalchut Noach petach habayit ויהי חירות המלך את אסתר המלכה עומדת בחצר, נעשה חן בעיניו, ויושת המלך לאסתר את שרביט הזהב אשר בידו, ותקרב אסתר, ותיגע בראש השרביט. ויאמר לה המלך, מלאך אסתר המלכה, ומה בקשתך? עד חצי המלכות ויינתן לך.
Thank you. And so we are on now to chapter 6. Because one day the king can't sleep. And so the king decides, he should probably read the most boring thing possible. So he gets the minutes, the annals of the history of the kingdom. And he hears that there was a guy who saved his life that never got any kind of recognition. And so he says, I got to figure out what to do. So he calls in his advisor, whose name was Haman. What would you do for somebody who was really, really worthy? I mean, like somebody who you really wanted to celebrate. And that advisor said, he must be talking about me. So he says, look, I would parade him around on a white horse wearing the king's clothes, basically screaming, hear ye is the greatest man in the world. And so the king said, absolutely, I want you to do that for Mordecai. Now, Haman, boo!
It's okay.
That he had to go and talk to his wife Zeresh again. And by the way, when you hear Zeresh, you go, Tss. So he started talking to Zeresh again. And Zeresh said, look, you got to keep doubling down on this plan. This guy's only going to keep setting you off. In fact, make plans right away to destroy these Jewish people. And it ends with a dun, dun, dun. And so with that, we're going to call Ken back to the screen as he chants the next chapter.
Balayla hahu nidadash nat hamelech vayomer lahavi et sefer zichronot divrei hayamim vayihu nikraim lifnei hamelech vayimtza katuv asher higid Mordechai al bigtana vateresh shnei sarisei hamelech mishomrei hasaf asher dikshar lishloach yad Melech Achashverosh, Vayomer HaMelech Manasa, Yakor Ugdula, LeMordechai Al Ze, Vayomeru, Narei HaMelech Mishartav, Lo Nasa Imo Davar.
Awesome. Thank you. We're really blessed with amazing readers, Ken, Morty, Lisa, and you'll hear Rick soon. We're very lucky to have you guys in the community. So, we now are at that party, that famed party who has 3 participants. I'm not even sure you could really call it a party. It was more like a small gathering of social distance. And it is the king, it is the queen, and it is his chief advisor, Mr. Haman. So at that party, they've eaten, they've drunk, they've had a great time. They might have drunk Malibu. They might have drunk whiskey or rye. They might have drunk tequila. They might have drunk even ancient drinks that Babylonians drank. Hold on to what that is, because mead is a very important word to know. And so I want you to picture this amazing dinner that they had. And at the end of the dinner, Esther says to the king, I got a confession. You see that guy, your advisor over there, Mr. Haman? He's trying to kick me. He's trying to kick all my people out of the kingdom. He's trying to destroy us. And the king just can't take it. So he goes on a walk. And while he's there, Haman grabs on to Queen Esther and he shakes her by the shoulders and he says, you got to help me. The king's going to be so upset at me. You got to do something. And when the king walks in, he thinks Haman's trying to hurt his wife. So he says to Haman, I'm done thinking. You got to leave. You wanted to make something bad happen to them. I'm going to make something bad happen to you. Goodbye, Mr. Haman. And on that, he would go. And so with that, I think Cantor, you're up next, correct?
Indeed. ויבוא המלך והמן לשתות עם אסתר המלכה ויאמר המלך לאסתר גם ביום השני במשתה היין מה שאלתך אסתר המלכה ותינתן לך ומה בקשתך עד חצי המלכות ותיעש ותען אסתר המלכה ותאמר אם מצאתי חן בעיניך המלך ואם המלך טוב תינתן לי נפשי בשאלתי ועמי בבקשתי כי נמכרנו אני ועמי להשמיד, להרוג ולאבד ואילו לעבדים ולשפחות נמכרנו החרשתי כי אין הצער שווה בנזק המלך.
All right. And so now the decree has been stopped. Haman is no longer the threat that we all feared that he was. In fact, the keys get handed over to the Jews. And just as he, that evil advisor, had the power, suddenly the Jews do. And the Jews realize that they can be glad and they can be joyous. And we are told, La Yehudim Haita Ora V'Simcha V'Sason V'Kar, which we'll sing later, that the Jews are happy and joyous and gladdened from having been saved, but also having been empowered. And so I put chapter 8 in, and I'm going to invite you to follow along with me as I chant it right now. Bayom ahu Natan Hamelech Ashverosh Lester Hamalka Et Beit Haman Sorer HaYehudim Umorachai Balivnei Hamelech Hidu Esther Mahula Vayisar Hamelech Et Tabato Asher Hevir Mehaman Vayitna LaMordechai Vatas Em Esther Et Mordechai Al Beit Haman. Esther, ותדבר לפני המלך, ותיפול לפני רגליו, ותיתן לו להעביר את רת המן. ואת המחשבתו אשר חשב על היהודי, ויושט המלך לאסתר את שרביט הזהב, ותקום אסתר ותעמוד לפני המלך. And so now we reach chapter 9. And so the Jews, in a way, get their revenge. We're not going to go so into it because I'm actually surprised the number of kids who are up this late. But know that should you want, you can read the thing if you want about what that revenge looks like. But I want to tell you that in this chapter also is the beginnings of the 4 mitzvot, the 4 ways that we are supposed to observe Purim. Number 1, I hope you ate a good meal because you're supposed to have a Purim Sudah. You're supposed to be full and joyous because we are learned in our tradition, Ein simcha ela basar v'yayin, you can't be joyous unless you have your wine and your meat. Sorry, vegetarians. Number 2, you have to give gifts to the poor. You have not done Purim right unless you've given a little bit of charity. So go on, find your favorite charity, give a little bit of money, find a way to give back. Number 3, you got to give gifts to your friends, mishloach manot. If you did not get a gift basket or gift bag, from the congregation, we know Kenny and Jody did because Jody's wearing the nose, I see. But if you did not get your gift basket, let us know because something broke down, but everybody should have gotten it. And by the way, bake some cookies, drop them off at a neighbor, bake some hamantaschen, drop them off at another neighbor, even give them, I don't know, toy somethings, right? Like just give them something. And that is the way that you make sure that your neighbors feel loved. And number four, we are going to hear, or we have been hearing, the story of Esther. Every year we tell it over and over again. And every year we read a little bit from the Megillah. And so reading that little bit right now, I'm going to call Ken Cohen back up to the screen.
ובשנים עשר חודש הוא חודש אדר, בשלושה עשר יום בו אשר הגיע דבר המלך בדתו להיעשות, ביום אשר סיברו אויבי היהודים לשלוט בהם, ונהפוך הוא אשר ישלטו היהודים המה בשונאיהם. נקהלו היהודים ביעריהם בכל מדינות המלך אחשוורוש לשלוח יד למבקשי רעתם, ואיש לא עמד לפניהם כי נפל פחדם על כל העמים.
All right, and so now we reach the end of our story. And Rick Abrams is going to pop on in 1 second. There's nothing narrative that happens. It's a postscript. It just says everybody's happy. It's all good. And that's what we want. We want in this moment to say everything's happy. It's all good. I will tell you, by the way, first of all, I'm sure imprinted on all our minds, and I want to name this, is the fact that it feels like this was the beginning of the year that we've been having. The last communal event that we had, besides a funeral that week, was our Purim spiel. Actually, after the Purim spiel, it was our Purim carnival. And so this is, in a way, this is a kind of a bittersweet holiday. But I will tell you that in the Middle Ages, when things weren't also good for the Jews, this was a big holiday of release. This was a holiday to kind of forget about it, to just be happy. That in a different time, in a different place, long ago, thousands of years in Persia, the Jews also found joy amidst a challenge. And so despite the fact that we may not be able to see each other in person, despite the fact that we might have masks, despite the fact that some of you haven't been to school, like in person in over a year, at the end of the day, this is a holiday to take a break from that and just find a little bit of joy. So Rick, you're up.
Vayasem lamelech Achashverosh mas al haaretz v'yeh hayam v'chol ma'aseh takapo ugvuroto ufarashat gdulat Mordechai asher gidlo hamelech Halohem ketuvim al sefer divrei hayamim lemalachei madai ufaras ki Mordechai hayudi mishnei lamelech Achashverosh v'gadol layudim v'ratzui lerov echav Doresh tov lamo v'dover shalom lechozaro.
Awesome. Yasher koach.
To all of our readers.
Yes, thank you to every single one of you. So blessed to have you guys in the community with your talent.
Truly.
And your love of this tradition. And so, by the way, if you ever want to chant, you want to learn to chant Torah, you want to chant next year, get in touch with us. We want you to.
Yeah, I don't know who that guy with the black curly hair is. Usually we have Ken Cohen chanting, but he didn't come today. Thank God the other guy came.
Yep. So with that, we're going to end with a blessing after, right?
Oh, yes. I'm just, La Yehudim Hai Torah is like one of my favorite melodies. So I've been excited about it for days. But yes, first the bracha. Baruch et Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, harav et harivenu v'hadar et nineinu, v'hanokim et nikmatenu, v'hamashalem
גמול לכל אויבי נפשנו, והנפרע לנו מצרינו. ברוך אתה אדוני הנפרע לעמו ישראל, מכל תרם האל המשיח.
All right, so now we get to sing.
Yay! Here we go. ליהודים הייתה אורה, בשמחה וששון ויתר. Let's try it together. ליהודים הייתה אורה, בשמחה וששון ויתר. Now we chant all together. May it be so for us. כן תהיה לנו. One more time. ליהודים הייתה אורה, בשמחה וששון ויקר.
Whew. All right, so
Did it.
we have now officially heard the Megillah. We've told the story. Now it's time to play a little bit of trivia. So here's what I need to do, because I am going to split you up into teams. So what I'll ask is I'm going to